Welcome to Deserts to Mountaintops. This is a show where we share our low lows and our high highs and everything in between. Each week, I'm coming to you with an intention to inspire and empower you with stories of survival from women who have journeyed out of their own personal deserts of self-abandonment and have climbed their way to the mountaintop of self-love. I'm your host, Jessica Buchanan. I'm a New York Times bestselling author of Impossible Odds, The Kidnapping of Jessica Buchanan and Her Dramatic Rescue by SEAL Team 6. So I'm obviously a kidnapping survivor and a rescue recipient. And I'm the founder of Soul Seek Press, which is a boutique, non-traditional publishing house that is geared towards women who've been through something and now they know something and now they want to teach us something. Today's guest is very near and dear to my heart. She is a Soul Speak Press author, and her memoir manifesto, Disempowered, the dis is in like parentheses or crossed out, How I Turned an Academic Death Sentence into My Life's Greatest Adventure, came out in May 2023 and hit the Amazon bestseller list in its first day. At an early age, Ellen Busch was diagnosed as dyslexic and as a result was given an academic death sentence. In a split second, her self-esteem was destroyed and her potential evaporated. Despite her challenges, or in spite of them, Ellen's parents fostered her education outside the classroom by teaching her how to pilot her father's boat and how to navigate, understand, and respect the ocean. They enabled Ellen to participate in team sports and programs such as Outward Bound, and made it possible for her to get certified in scuba diving at the young age of 17. As a young adult, Ellen became an expert skier and ski instructor and fell in love with adventure and the challenges it brought. Mastering these skills enabled Ellen to persevere and empowered her to earn both a bachelor's and a master's degree, all with dyslexia, which is something that she was told she would never be able to do. Despite her accomplishments, Ellen still suffered from low self-esteem and was consistently underemployed, as well as a regular target of bullies and predators. After escaping an abusive marriage, Ellen faced her trauma and the belief systems that had been holding her back. Even with the sudden loss of her parents, who were relentless in their support for her, she learned to heal and ask for help. It's been through her work with coaches, therapists, and training with Navy SEALs that Ellen has learned to take back her power, live confidently, and to thrive as she follows her dreams. She currently resides in Colorado, where she can follow her passions down the ski slopes and out into the world beyond. And she's here with us today. Ellen, welcome.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, you are an inspiring and motivating person. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you and to be on this journey. Here's your book. I've got your book here, my ring light.
Yep.
With you as you have put pen to paper and really worked to accomplish such an incredible piece of work. So why don't you go ahead and start and tell us, this is Deserts to Mountaintops. So we like to hear the desert moment or series of moments and then take us on that journey of how you got to the mountaintop and what that was like.
Sure. So for me, it's really been a 10-year journey of healing. And I actually start the book with my surrender point, which was my late 40s when I had escaped from my abusive, soon-to-be ex-husband.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate that my parents took me in. Otherwise, I wouldn't have had any place to go. And I realized that I was so traumatized that I really needed help.
Mm-hmm.
I was driving through stop signs and red lights.
Mm-hmm.
I could barely function. And that moment of surrender was a surrender to a higher power. And I just looked up to the sky and just said, okay, God, I'm all yours. I don't know what else to do. I mean, it was really, I was desperate for change and I was desperate for answers. And I was willing to do whatever it took because I felt that my life was at stake.
Mm-hmm.
If I had continued down this road, I would get sick or I would get into another bad relationship. And I knew I had to make big change. And that was where I started.
Wow. So when you say that if I continued down this road, like, what does that mean? What did that road look like for you?
If I didn't make changes, if I didn't face and unearth the patterns
Mm,
that were haunting me, that were causing me to live in a state of low self-esteem, which I didn't understand at the time. And it all went back to my childhood. You know, as you
mhm,
mentioned in the introduction, you know, the diagnosis of being dyslexic at such a young age and the way it's perceived um, just wiped out my self-esteem and my self-worth.
mhm.
And it's actually even bigger than that because it affects your identity.
Yeah.
It changes your identity because you are now labeled and perceived as a person who is brain damaged or who has an intellectual disability. And that's just not
Yes,
the case.
it's so interesting to me. I maybe because I'm a teacher by profession,
Yep.
and I have spent a lot of time in the classroom with kids with all sorts of neuro divergent um, situations, if you will.
Mhm.
I've never really considered the complexities of dyslexia.
Yep.
Um, and I think it's something maybe that I would put in the same category, or not even the same category, but in terms of like impact as ADHD. And that's like such a gross overgeneralization, I realize.
Sure.
So can you take us back to the time when you got the diagnosis and what that was like? And it's, you write about it really beautifully in your book, being a second grader and what that was like, learning to finally being allowed to learn to read. So like, can you
Right.
take us back to that?
Sure. So actually, I was originally diagnosed as ambidextrous.
Okay.
And the thought or the belief system at that time was that if I was ambidextrous, I didn't have a dominant eye.
Okay.
And if a child did not have a dominant eye, that child could not learn to read.
Ever.
Or they had to first develop the dominant eye.
Okay.
So I was tested, and I still remember this test where a teacher would stand directly in front of me about 10 feet apart, and they'd bounce a ball right down the center line to see which hand I would reach for the ball. And
Hmm.
they bounced it right to the center of me, so I caught it with both hands.
Hmm.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So that led to other tests, and eventually the WISC test, which is the standard test. It's for measuring intelligence and is used to diagnose dyslexia.
Okay.
So it was around that time. It would have been, I don't know exactly how old I was, but it would have been around 6 or 7. Um, and then from that point forward, for most of the day, I was separated from the other classmates
Hmm.
and received, one-on-one instruction, which is great. But now you've taken me out of the social aspect.
Right. And you put a target on your back.
And they put a target on my back. I had a minor speech impediment.
Hmm.
So I was also, which is very common. So I was going for speech therapy in school as well as the special um, instruction, but the lisp that I had made me the target of bullies.
Okay.
So it was like I was taken out of the whole social system of the school,
Mm,
which is very painful, and it's
yeah.
traumatic because and there's the inference and the bias that the teachers have and the administrators have. Um, I was treated as a second-class citizen. My
Hmm.
parents were told in a parent-teacher conference that I was never going to go to college. I might finish high school. College was completely out of the question. And they should focus on finding me a husband to take care of me because I wasn't going to contribute to society.
God. I
I
can't
was
even
6 or 7.
imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine an educator saying something like that now. I mean, that's insane to me. It's preposterous.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, that is definitely going to inform the way you move through not only your like future education, but just your life in general.
Exactly.
Right?
It affects everything from that point forward is changed.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so you're now put on this path where no one expects anything from you.
Right.
Okay. However, your parents had a different approach and a completely different mindset. Thank God. So
Yes.
what was that about?
They just refused to accept that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they knew that I was a healthy, intelligent, capable child. I mean, it was obvious.
Yeah.
One of the things we did was we spent a lot of time in the museums and the different sites around New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And I do write a little bit about this, but my mom used to read all of the plaques and all the displays, and I learned it all. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I have been to the Museum of Natural History in New York City so many times, I could give tours.
Yeah.
I could. But it wasn't just that, you know, it was the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was all the sites all over the city. We did the things that the tourists do that the locals don't do.
Right.
So, but it
And
was
what an
very,
enriching like experience to
mhm,
then buffer what you weren't getting at
right,
school, right?
right.
And then let's talk a little bit about this like adventure, right? Like, you know, the byline is how I turned an academic death sentence into my life's greatest adventure. So you have this survivor spirit, which is really, you know, what Deserts to Mountaintops, our anthologies, all of everything that we do around that theme, you really embody that. So I'm always so curious how you recognize that in yourself and then what ways you access it. How do you pursue that? And how did you do that as a kid?
A couple things. I am naturally curious. Um, in fact, in one personality test I took, it came up as my number one trait,
Curiosity.
curiosity. So there was that. And then growing up, I had the privilege of growing up with a summer home on Fire Island
Mm-hmm.
and was always in the ocean and the shoreline environment. And I was intensely curious. And so that was one piece of it. And then the other side of it was the encouragement from my dad primarily, you know, to get out there and learn. He understood that learning through challenge was just as important, if not more important, than learning in the classroom
Mm-hmm.
because of what it taught you about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And he, you know, we were always out in his boat, always doing things, fishing with him. And then as I got older, you know, he put me into Outward Bound, which I wanted to do,
Right.
which was an incredible learning experience. Um, I got out there and took on challenges outside of the classroom, for example, rappelling and rock climbing, and leading my boat crew through white water through class 4 and 5 rapids. And I was successful.
And
And it
you're how
was
old at this time?
15.
15. I mean, that's incredible.
But I had success. And
Yeah.
I never had success in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I was a normal kid. I didn't have that dyslexic label tattooed on my forehead. So
Mm-hmm.
I fell in love with that. And every time I had success, I learned and I grew. And that just led to more interest in adventure.
Right.
And then at 17, it was, you know, scuba diving. My dad asked me if I wanted to get certified to scuba dive. I nearly jumped out of my skin with excitement because I just so loved the ocean and living by the ocean and was fascinated by it. So this was going to be a chance to explore under the surface of the ocean.
Wow. All of
So
those things terrify me. Like all of the things that you find so fascinating and you have success in. Like I tried. Fun fact about me, I don't know if you know, but I am the first woman to have been certified as a scuba diver in Somalia. Like, because when
wow.
I lived there, yeah, it's a whole long story and this isn't about me, but I was petrified every single time I went out there in the water. And I probably didn't go any deeper than 6 feet because I like floating on top.
Yeah.
I need my feet planted in the ground. So when, as I was going through your manuscript prior to publishing and reading just your beautiful descriptions of these like spiritual experiences you had in
Mhm.
nature, under the water, in the ocean, I
Yeah.
could so appreciate them, but they feel so far out of my realm of like access because of my own like hangups and fears. So it makes you all the more inspiring to me
Thank you.
because you do all of these things that I don't feel like I could ever do. And I think that that's so incredible, and that's part of storytelling, right?
Right.
Is why we do that, and you showcase so beautifully just this other side of learning and success.
Yes. And thank you for those compliments. I
Sure. I mean
definitely
them,
take those
all of
in.
them. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, it's the one place where I had a challenge, but I had success.
Hmm.
And combining that with being so intensely curious, it just became very natural for me.
Hmm. And so, like, how has that then set you up for adulthood? Like, what has, like, the subsequent years and decades been like for you?
I learned that I could take on challenges and be successful. Um, as I moved through the school system and did go to college, I became more and more successful in the classroom. And when I got to college, I was able to be not need any support services at all. So these things, the success, they pile on top of each other
Mm,
and they grow. And I need to be challenged or I get bored.
yes,
And I
I
really
feel that.
do.
I hear you. Yeah, yeah.
Um, so like last winter, I joined a club to learn telemark skiing.
Yeah, I
That's
still
right.
don't really understand what that is, but it sounds really complicated.
It is. It's actually the hardest form of skiing. And for people who've never seen it before, basically your heels are not fixed to the ski. So in order to generate a turn, you have to go into a lunge position and you
You must
switch
have
back.
killer like thighs.
They get strong over the season.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but it's a very, very different technique. But what I've
Hmm.
learned, the challenges that I really love are both kinesthetic
Hmm.
challenges and physical challenges combined.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
just love to learn how to move in this new way. And it feels very fluid. It feels very natural. Um, and I love being on the snow and I'm out there as much
Yeah.
as possible. So,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's that same knowledge that you have about yourself and the way you thrive and
mhm.
and what you need that has led you to seeking out uh, different types of coaching. Like some are pretty extreme. Tell us about the impetus for that and what that accomplished in your life.
Sure. So after my surrender point, I did go to work with a therapist. Um,
Mhm.
I suddenly lost my mother in a horrific accident,
Mhm.
which I do write about in the book.
Yep.
Um, and then coming out of that, I really wasn't happy with the therapist, and I found a coach who I really liked. I was reading his blog every day, and that really started me on a coaching model. He was a general life coach, and that's where we really tackled the dyslexia labeled dragon. We slayed that
Mm,
dragon together, and he was an amazing coach. And then I came out of that still not feeling satisfied, even though I'd done all this work. My life still wasn't where I wanted it to be. And the question that kept popping up in my heart was, well, what's next?
mm,
What's the next thing for me? I knew I wanted to learn to thrive, but I couldn't articulate that at that point. And that's when I stumbled onto Mark Divine and his Unbeatable Mind program. And I know the SEALs are near and dear to your heart.
Yes, they are.
Mark and many of the other retired SEALs have learned that their skills are incredibly valuable in business and in coaching. So I attended my first event with him in 2016 and was blown away and realized that this is the person that I needed to learn from to learn how to thrive. Coaching and doing these programs is not about learning how to jump out of helicopters and parachute. This is about what is going on in the minds and the hearts of these men. And what is so special about them that enables them to perform at such a high level. And that's what I wanted to learn. And I have been moving through that process ever since. I've also worked with another coach, Dennis Stoika, who is actually an Unbeatable Mind coach, but is a recently retired FBI agent, a supervisory FBI agent, actually.
Yeah.
And coaching with him was a game changer. Absolutely wonderful experience. So I have this pattern that I've evolved into, which is challenge, growth, transformation, rinse and repeat. And I had no idea that this amount of transformation and healing was even possible. And I'm still uncovering and learning about my own potential.
That's just so incredible. You know, I think there are a couple of things I want to point out. First of all, I think a lot of people get stuck because maybe they don't even know that the coaching world exists or that is an option. And, you know, I think that there are maybe that's not accessible to everybody, but I think that there are certain levels and that if that's something that you want, then somehow it'll come to pass. And you are a person you're so teachable. For somebody who has been, you know, basically abused by the education system, you remain so open. Again, it's that curiosity, right? And that curiosity is what has led you to push yourself to your own boundaries, right? And to push a little bit further. And I think everybody needs a coach at some point in their lives. And I'm not just saying that because I'm one, you know, I'm a different kind of coach. But I can also speak to your teachability and your flexibility and your curiosity as basically your writing coach. But I think that when I had a doctor's appointment yesterday. I'm moving in a different direction with some trying to get some things sorted out with my health. And he said to me, because we were talking about nutrition, which is so hard and stressful and so triggering. But he said, you know, if you were going to run a marathon, and I looked at him like, maybe you've run a marathon, but that is not my jam. And he said, okay, how about a 5K? Have you run a 5K? And I said, yes, I've run a 5K. He said, okay, if you're getting ready for a 5K, there's a difference between exercising and training. And, you know, then it went back to the food and that we were training for something, right? And so I think that is a significant thing to point out about you and the way you have approached getting unstuck and moving into that transformation. You approach it like it's training because you want to go somewhere.
Yes. Yeah. And I knew there was no way I was going to stay stuck in the person who I was, because I believe that would have cost me my life. So I had to move forward, and I wanted to move forward. And as I began to heal, you know, like I said earlier, this is a 10-year journey. So as I healed, life got better. As I learned more, life got better. As I grew, life got better. And it has its own built-in reward system when you're willing to get uncomfortable. Every time I have gotten uncomfortable, I've gotten a reward. And I think there's very few things in life that I am certain about. That is one of them. Now, the catch to that is it may not always be the reward that you expect.
Yes.
But there is always a reward. And I am willing to get out there and be uncomfortable and see what that reward is.
I think that is a mic drop moment. Like, and again, I feel like I'm like got chills because I mean, this is the conversation that I needed to have. Again, my doctor was saying yesterday, there's no shortcuts.
Yes.
Where you're going to be uncomfortable. And I've been thinking about that all yesterday and all day today in regards to pretty much everything. My kids are bored and they're griping and it's summer and I'm like, well, you're uncomfortable. You're going to have to be uncomfortable. You're going to have to figure it out, you know, like just saying that to myself over and over again. And you are like proof, right, that you have to be uncomfortable in order to level up.
Yep.
And you've done that. So, okay. So for someone who has, you know, been underestimated pretty much for most of their life, what made you decide that you were going to write a book?
Actually, there was a very specific moment. So in the span of really 10 months, I had escaped from my ex-husband, found a new job, reconnected with a former boyfriend who I've written about. And my mom died in a tragic accident. And I knew I had a story to tell. I didn't know there were many more chapters that I had to live before that would be able to come to fruition, but I knew I had a story to tell. And it was important. It's the final piece of the hero's journey, is to bring back what you've learned to the tribe so you can help others.
Yes. So tell us a little bit then about that, coming back to the tribe and telling others. What has that experience been like for you? It's a harrowing journey in and of itself.
Yes, it is. You know, putting myself out there with such private, intimate moments, you know, my thoughts, you know, I'm really letting the world into my head and into my heart. It was very scary. Part of my training with Mark Devine is I was part of a boat crew for a year, and we would meet weekly, and that's the group of people who really supported me. I moved through many months of fear and asking myself, do I really want to do this? And the answer always was, yes, I needed to do this because this was part of my purpose. But it was still frightening. And they helped me move through that fear to comfort and purpose. And that was really a gift. It was also incredibly cathartic. Because some of those chapters were very hard to write. Some of them are written just from joy and fun. And it also helped me to win the most important war of my life. And what I mean, it was the war for my self-esteem and self-worth that had been taken from me as a child. And just, I'll never forget this. I hit send. I think it was February 15th. And I sent you the final version of the manuscript. And I sat there and I was in shock. I was in total shock for about 2 weeks, and I didn't understand what I was feeling. And I'm 54. I was diagnosed at 6 or 7. And I realized what I had just sent you was 230 pages of proof on evidence on top of evidence on top of evidence that I was capable, smart, and unstoppable. And it was at that moment that I realized I won the war for my self-esteem.
And everybody who's
Nobody,
watching is like, yes.
and
I'm
I
like,
will,
I'm crying.
oh my gosh,
So
thank you.
beautiful. It's really beautiful.
And I will never let that happen again. I will never have my self-esteem taken away from me. So, but I
I'll
fought
never
that
forget
battle. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
sending you, I'll never forget sending you the email after on the day of your launch, and you'd hit bestseller status, and you wrote back 2 words: I won.
Yes. Yes, I remember that.
And I felt so proud of you and so proud to be a part of this work.
Thank you.
Because yeah, you won.
I won.
And you're going to keep winning.
Yep.
And this is what I like, I've been thinking so much about, like, why do I do this? Like, am I crazy? Like, why have I started a publishing company? And it's because of those moments of you, like, watching a woman who the world has tried to shake down and strip down of all of her power. And, one by one, piece by piece, you have built yourself back up, and you have made a huge declaration publicly.
Yep.
And you're unstoppable. And I think, like, the next email you said, I've already started my second book. And I was like, oh my goodness. So I mean, it's incredible, and we need your voice, but we also need your model of courage.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I beat the education system.
Yeah.
I beat them. I did it, but I also have to give a lot of credit to my parents.
Yeah. Which you
And
do very beautifully.
yeah, and it's very important. And this is also a way of kind of continuing their legacy, because they were my most important teachers. My father had such amazing sayings and principles that he lived by. And one of them was, everything I do for you girls has a reason. Another one was, whenever possible, learn from the best. And he always reinforced these things on a regular basis. But the whole challenge piece of it for me started at a very young age. And this is very funny. It is not in the book. When I was, maybe 7, 8 years old, I had chores that were hard. He was teaching me to do hard things. And I would complain and say, Daddy, that's hard. And he'd say, it's good for you. Put hair on your chest. And I put my hands on, I put my hands on my little girl hips and look up at him and say, but Daddy, I'm a girl. And he'd say, go do it anyway. It's good for you. So,
words to live by.
Exactly. It was very funny. He used to say it all the time. It became an ongoing joke between us. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Well, if you were to, let's say, hopefully there's another woman watching this, and she's grappling with the decision as to whether or not she should write her story down and let the whole world into her heart and into her head. What would you say to her, and how would you guide her?
I would say, tell your story, because there's somebody out there who needs to hear it or read it. You telling your story and making yourself vulnerable is scary, but you can help a lot of people. You can help a lot of women. Everybody's journey is unique. So nobody else is going to have your story.
Yeah. No one can say it the way you can say it, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, Ellen, why don't you tell us where we can find you if somebody wants to connect with you?
Sure. Yeah. My website is nice and simple. It's ellenbusch.com. You can reach me through there. Just don't forget that Bush is spelled like the beer, not like the former presidents. Family joke. Everybody gets it. So again, ellenbusch.com. And also you can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay. And I think you're on Instagram too, right?
Yes, Instagram and Facebook. So
Perfect. Awesome. Under your name, Ellen Busch.
yes. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you again for your generosity in terms of sharing your story and your vulnerabilities and your time. And for those of you who joined us and watched this episode of Deserts to Mountaintops, I'm grateful for you, and I hope that you feel inspired and you take the next steps toward the mountaintop of loving yourself and telling your story.
Thank you.